You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
There was a little bar in Mill Valley where all the Starfleet trainees used to go.
The 602 Club.
You know it.
I was there more times than I can remember.
We're closed. We need to kill the lights.
How do you even know they're on?
Hey, I said we're closed.
Look, we just need to stay off the streets.
Well, stay off them somewhere else. I'll call the police.
You can't do that. You'll be putting the cops in danger.
I'll put you in danger.
I'm done explaining this.
Whoa, she is very strong.
Sir, this is for your protection. We need this place to look closed.
You speak Chinese?
I still hear neon.
Who hears neon?
Am I blind, but maybe not lawyer?
You're what? What do you mean he's blind?
I don't know. I thought he was sent to spy on me, and now I'm not so sure.
You think he's on our side?
Our side of what? Who's Karate Kid?
Danny Rand.
Boy billionaire?
He's a little off in the head, but he packs a mean right hook when it counts.
So do you.
You okay?
Now or in general?
Both.
Well, I'm alive. You?
Just getting back into the world.
From where?
Prison. We'll talk about it later. How'd you end up here?
I'm working a case.
Yeah? How's that going for you so far?
All right, back door's clear. Everything's locked. I think we're safe for now.
So we're just gonna wait it out here?
You got a better plan?
Is there a plan where I get my scarf back?
Just need it till this is over.
Welcome, everybody, to the 602 Club. I am your host, Matthew Rushing, and I'm very excited to be here tonight as we are going to be diving into The Defenders, Marvel's brand new series that they have been doing on Netflix in partnership, and so very excited to do that. And needed a Marvel master, and so I got the one and only Daniel Proulx.
You know, I will say that it shouldn't have to take the city shaking to get us back together.
You know, I know. But I just are we ready to be a team yet? I don't know.
We're not a team. We're not a team.
Yeah, no. This is just this one time. We're gonna get together. We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna go our separate ways. So, Harlem and the Bronx don't play well together. So
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to do this. It's for the most part, I've really been enjoying this series, and so I'm excited to kind of talk to basically their Avengers get together. This is what that is for them, and so. Before we do that, of course, you can find the 602 Club everywhere, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, as well as every other show on the Trek FM network, and we're a featured provider there. While you're at it, if you're heading over to Apple Podcasts, give us a star rating and review. We say this every time, but it's so true. It actually does help. It helps more people find the show. So I'd love you to go over there and do that and help us out in that way. And if you do, we will call you out on the show. We'll thank you for your star rating and review. You can also find us on Twitter at TrekFM, Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM, and we've got our listeners-only discussion group. You can find that on Facebook, and that's the Babel Conference. If you want to get to that, you can go to Facebook and type Babel into the search field, or you can go to our website at trek.fm, where you can find all of our shows, and any of the show pages there, you can hit discussion, and that'll lead you right to the listeners-only discussion group. And last but not least, really good way, if you'd like to interact with the show, is to leave us an email. And the best way to do that is go to trek.fm/contact, choose a show, and choose the 602 Club. And that comes to me and any other host here that we can, it allows us to be able to maybe have a more long-form conversation. And so we'd love to do that. So feel free to do that anytime. Daniel, I wanted to ask you something as we kind of look to dive into the Defenders, about kind of where we are. I felt like you kind of needed to do this kind of conversation, when you got to the Avengers, because it's like you've been through a lot. And so I wanted to ask you, with all the shows that we've had so far, What were you feeling as we were diving into the Defenders? And two, what have been the standouts still? The ones, the series that have really been basically the ones that you judge all the other Marvel shows by.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not a loaded question or anything.
No, not at all. Not at all. So.
I was excited. I was excited to see these four characters get together. You know, like you have already called it a mini Avengers kind of thing. And I was excited to see that. And, you know, obviously we'll get into it. But that aspect that I was excited to see, the team ups, the crossovers, you know, the banter, that stuff didn't disappoint. I really enjoyed that aspect of the show. And as far as that's a really interesting. I guess the top two for me going into it was Jessica Jones and Daredevil season 1 would be my picks for the best of the Marvel Netflix stuff so far.
No, I think that makes complete sense. I can understand why you would call out both of those. You know, I think they're. Let's put it this way. Look, all of these shows I think are pretty well done. I think the production value for the most part is usually pretty good. I could say that they probably should spend more money on the CGI in some places.
I agree.
That would really be helpful, especially into Defenders. But, you know, on a whole, these shows are great. You know, and for me, kind of coming in, my hallmarks are Daredevil season 1, just like you, and actually Luke Cage. I really enjoyed the first season of Luke Cage, and part of that I think is that, and I don't know, I feel like Luke is maybe the most likable of all of them. Just as a character and a person.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that. I think obviously Jessica Jones has her charm, but
yeah, she definitely does.
But as a character, as like a person, yeah, absolutely. Luke Cage is definitely the hero's hero of the show. He's I guess like the closest that we would call to Captain America on the show. He's the one that's level-headed. He's got, you know, I agree. Luke Cage came out of the show probably the best, I think, in terms of how he was portrayed and where his character is and where it kind of goes. They all have their ups and downs, but I think Luke looked really good in the show. That's for sure.
I think, you know, the one thing about that is, you know, they all work together in a very interesting way here in the Defenders. But, you know, there's something about the character of Luke Cage, and, you know, I feel like Mike Coulter, who plays him, there's just something about this guy that I just really like and I kind of gravitate towards. And maybe it is because he's a lot like, you know, like you said, the Captain America type. You know, he tends to be very strong morally and kind of have a good center of right and wrong and basically a good head on his shoulders. He's, you know, he's not trying to get everybody killed all the time, you know, and seems to really care about everyone, even though this is still a new world for him. So, yeah. I guess coming into kind of the Defenders, I was excited to see how this was going to work, you know. It doesn't always work when you put a bunch of people together, you know, and on a whole, I think, you know, it ends up working pretty well. I think they do the banter well, the relationships well, and it was nice to kind of just see them all. I mean, we've been waiting for this moment, you know. It's like Avengers. You've been waiting for them all to finally meet each other and get together, and I think it worked pretty well. And so that brings me to kind of this idea of bringing the team together. And first, I just kind of wanted to dive into a little bit more just their interactions and which ones that you really liked, which ones you thought worked really well, which ones were like, because one of the things I noticed was that at bringing them all together, they finally gave you a reason for Claire having been in all the shows, sometimes too much. Mm-hmm. The fact that she's kind of the linchpin for all of them, in that they all know Claire and she knows all of them, but they don't know all of each other. Yeah. And so she kind of brings them all together, which I thought was nice, because finally it made at least that part really pay off for the show.
It's a really interesting idea and concept too. Like, no matter, say you've only watched one of those shows and you came into Defenders, she can kind of also be your window into those other shows. You know, there's times when she's kind of explaining certain characters to other people, and if you trust her, like, when you were watching, Luke Cage or whatever. Then you can kind of trust her word that Jessica Jones is a good person, or Daredevil is. So I'm not sure, obviously that wasn't the point of the character or anything like that, but it's nice that it does make sense that she's kind of the linchpin that everything turns on. She's kind of the glue that holds it all together, and it's been well established at this point. So it's a good payoff, I think, for that character.
Yeah, and I think it ends up, I really do actually think it ends up working pretty well. I like what they do in that sense. I would say Iron Fist, it did feel a little bit like she was in there too much, but obviously they at least use that to their advantage here, and I think that's a good thing. Other than, there's nothing worse than having a big part of one of your shows go nowhere, and kind of lead to nothing. And so they don't do that here, and I really appreciated that. I thought, okay, at least they have been setting this up on purpose and making it mean something, and I really like that. So I'm wondering for you, it was really interesting. Again, as with the Avengers, you end up with this whole thing of the characters kind of coming together and kind of meeting each other for the first time, most of them, and kind of figuring each other out, where they come from. And I was wondering for you, which of the interactions really worked the best for you thought, and you really enjoyed the most? And were there any that you just was like, I don't know, this doesn't seem to fit?
Well, obviously, I think what will probably be most people's favorites, it certainly is mine, is Jessica Jones and Daredevil, which kind of came out of nowhere for me. I was not expecting that, but they played very well off of each other. They had a really interesting dynamic that I wouldn't have seen ahead of time, but it was written and played super fantastically, and I really, really enjoyed that relationship.
Especially when he comes in, he's like, "I'm your lawyer." She's like, "What?"
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great scene. And it fit both of those characters so well, and I did really like their interaction. I'm trying to think, I also really enjoyed, and this is going to sound funny, but I really enjoyed Jessica Jones being back with Luke Cage.
Yeah.
And them actually dealing with their mess that they left each other in. And I loved their kind of adult conversations, like they just, you had S going on, I had S going on. It happened.
Yeah.
We both could have handled it better, but they didn't turn it into a big deal, which I thought, wow, how revolutionary. Two adults having an adult conversation, both saying, hey, you know what, we both screwed up. It's cool.
Whatever, let's move on. That was a fantastic scene. And it plays really well into both of their characters and the situation as a whole. It doesn't feel forced in any way. It feels like this is a conversation that these people would get to at some point. And like you say, they're both adults. They both, they know what they did. They know where they are now. And it's just an acknowledgement of that. And we don't get too much of it. We get more in the end than we do in the beginning. But yeah, I agree. Seeing them reunited, they have a really good chemistry between those two characters for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, completely, 100% agree. And it was just, it's kind of interesting to watch, Jessica Jones, because we haven't had her season 2 yet, so this is the next time we get to see her, and I really, I just like the way they kind of subtly pushed her character forward. They use this season to show her that, she doesn't have to be all, hard as nails all the time to everyone. There are people that are actually going to be out there. They're going to care about her. And, I feel like they found a way to have these guys kind of break down her walls just a little bit in a really good way. Like, show her the ability to be okay with being vulnerable to somebody. As well as, doing the same thing, with her friend, who by the end of the show fixes her window, and she's back in business as Alias Investigation. And I thought that's a great way to have this character kind of continue that arc from their first season and into what they're going to go into their second season. And I really thought they did a good job with that. And I felt like they also did the same thing with Luke, as, they got him out of prison and had him come home and kind of end up in this place where, And he's not a guy who ever really wanted to be a superhero. But I thought it was interesting in the end that it was actually Misty Knight who kind of pushes him into it. Even though she kind of gets frustrated with him later on being the superhero and not playing by the quote-unquote law rules, I thought it was really interesting. It's kind of her fault, you know. She asked him to do it.
I wonder, well, we can talk about what happens to Misty later. I just wanted to agree with you, though, that, like, I think to varying degrees of success, but I think overall, a very, very positive way, they push each of these characters into, like, with a movie like The Avengers, you don't have the time to kind of push, you know, like The Avengers is a big thing. It happens to the characters, and then we kind of deal with fallout. Whereas this is more like we have a little more time here. So it's like there is an arc within the movie, which, you know, now, like you're mentioning, you know, Luke Cage is kind of accepting this role here, and Jessica Jones is kind of back in business at this point after the events of season 1, and obviously Daredevil, some significant things happen to him. But it's like every character is pushed forward in their story. Like we pick up from right where we expect them to be, we move them along, and then we kind of set their course for the future. And I think this show really does that well for the characters. It definitely got me excited for a lot of the stuff that's upcoming.
No, I agree with you there. And one of the things I have to say too is that, you know, Daredevil season 2 was tough for me. Like I really liked the first half with Punisher.
Yeah.
But the second half I thought was kind of a mess. And part of that was just because Matt became a big, huge,
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
He did.
And he was not enjoyable to watch. But what I really liked about this season of The Defenders is that they kind of they found a way to bring Matt back full circle to being the guy who's more the hero. And being somebody who really believes in people and is willing to, you know, sacrifice his life for others and all of those things. And I really liked that. And I also really liked the way in which, you know, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's Foggy who kind of finally helps him accept that this is just who he is and that the city actually needs him as Daredevil, not just the lawyer. And I thought that was really cool to watch that relationship between them, which has been strained, kind of actually grow in a really kind of interesting and beautiful way.
I agree. And to add a little bit to that, the relationship with Karen as well, like the three-way relationship between those three characters has always been one of the better parts of Daredevil. And this was something else I was going to mention in the last part. Not just the big major four characters, but we get more mingling of the secondary characters that we have not really seen before like this. And obviously some are going to be hits and some are going to be misses, but I really thought they were mostly utilized well. Some of them were just kind of dressing for the most part, but like it seems like even these small minor characters, you know, Trish gets a scene, an important scene in the last episode, the one before the last episode, and Karen and Foggy obviously have a lot to do, and Colleen is a big part of the story as well. But we also get, you know, these secondary and tertiary characters both interacting with these main characters and with other ones, and I thought that was handled very well for the most part. I really liked seeing all those people again.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, because what was fun, I thought, about the show was actually having those secondary characters interact with each other without the main characters. You know, having Foggy and Colleen and, you know, Karen and Misty, all of them kind of being together while the others are out kind of trying to save them and everything, I thought was really fascinating. Of course, along with Claire, too. You know, putting them all together where they now know each other, and it makes the world a lot bigger. You know, it kind of reminds me in the DC TV universe when Flash and Arrow finally cross over, you know, and then all the crossovers start happening, and it really opens up the universe. So you feel like now, in any one of the shows that they're doing, that any of the characters could pop in and out whenever they need to, just like a comic book, which is so much fun when that world is, those pages are kind of opened and everybody can just kind of spill out and go into whatever, you know, they need to. And that's great stuff. So I want to ask you, not a huge fan, obviously, of Danny Rand. And I wanted to ask you about his characterization throughout this show and his interactions with the other characters.
Well, they try. They try with him and Luke. I would say, okay, I can see the effort. I mean, obviously, they can do whatever they want, but there's obviously a very large legacy in the comics of those two characters. And I thought it was okay. Some of their stuff was funny. I would say that I wasn't one of the ones that like just dumped on the actor or the character the whole time. Like, I get it. He's not amazing. It's not great. I would say he fares slightly better here. Mostly because at the end, he's actually, it feels like the lesson he's learned from Matt is significant and important. And it feels like he does grow a little bit at the end there in his last scene. But that's about as much. He's fine. He's definitely my least favorite, but he's there, and he's obviously a big important player in this storyline because of all the Kunlun stuff, and turns out dragon skeletons. But so he's there, but yeah, he's okay.
See, I love that because my favorite thing is the conversation between Claire and Colleen, where Claire's like, Colleen, Danny has been training his whole life for this. This is what it means to be the Iron Fist. And Colleen's like, and Danny will tell that to anybody who will listen.
Yeah, that was
and I was like,
a great line.
I was like, yes, absolutely, because that's all Danny knows how to do. And, you know, I would say in this series that Danny is the one who fares the worst again. Because he's still the stupidest.
I agree. Yep.
I mean, he's just utterly ridiculous. The fact that in the end of the series, he gets tricked into fighting.
Oh my God. It was so bad.
Come on. Elektra tricks him into fighting with his hand. And if we all know what's going to happen. It's like, hey, bro, why don't you find a way to maneuver the fight away from this section?
Yeah. Or stop.
Where your hand is needed to open.
Or stop glowy handing while you're fighting near it.
I know.
And then
come on.
Yeah, it's
you're
annoying.
the Iron Fist, right? You shouldn't need to fist up to like fight, Elektra. I don't care who she is.
Well, she's the Black Sky. I don't know if you've heard or not about this, Matthew, but she's the Black Sky. So
yes, but I don't even know what that means.
No, because they never
never
tell you. And that was really a frustration for me, was when she was solo fighting the whole team. And like, I'm not like super picky about this kind of stuff, but I'm like, why can she just beat everyone up? I don't nothing has been told to us or explained to us. Some of these ancient people, we'll get into that, but it was just annoying when she was just beating everybody up. I'm like, nah, I don't.
No, absolutely. And can I just say one thing too? Luke Cage is supposed to be like hitting a steel post, right?
Goodness, yes.
So Elektra fighting him, her kicking him or hitting him or whatever shouldn't do anything.
Nothing. Should do literally nothing to the man.
Basically, shouldn't it like break her bones?
Yep. As far as I know, again, because it's very murky here and it's not clear, they could say, at some point, Marvel could come out and say, hey, this version of Elektra has these special powers, but it's not been explained yet, and she just can do these things. Luke Cage, I think, was depowered tremendously in this show, just because I feel like he kind of would have made it a little unfair. Because 99% of these scenarios, it seems like he should just be able to walk into, and nobody can. They'll hit him. They'll hit him with the swords and stuff, and then they'll break, and then okay, now what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that, and I feel like it was frustrating because I get that there are ways to, fluster him,
sure.
and if you're smart, maybe you just bring some RPGs with you. To hit him with, because those will at least do something. But the fact that she had any effect on him, or that anyone else had any effect on him like that, just made no sense. I mean, it'd be kind of like if Batman tried to punch Superman in the face with just his bare hand, right? Mm-hmm. Without a gloved hand or, whatever. He'd just break his hand because Superman would be like hitting, a steel pole. And same thing with Luke Cage. He has that same strength, right? So,
Yeah, Elektra, again, I don't know how much we want to lead the topic here, but Elektra is not an intimidating villain, and she's not a plausible threat to the four of them. I mean, I would argue that she was, whatever. This is comic book nerdy. We're arguing power levels at this point, but she's not. She would,
but she doesn't have the +3 and the -4 and the that's exactly what we're kind of doing.
But come on now, it's just as important to raise the stakes when you're going to team people up so that you don't bring their level down. You know what I'm saying? Because then they seem...
Right.
It's off-putting when you're seeing what he does in Luke Cage versus what he's doing in the Defenders. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought he... and so...
Right. I mean, because obviously, he's never fought anybody that has these kind of abilities in the sense of, like, the fighting skill. He's been up against thugs and guys with guns. So I get it. And I love that Jessica Jones, she's like, am I the only one who doesn't know karate?
Yeah, that was a great line too.
That was excellent stuff. But yeah, let's talk about that because we got into Elektra a little bit. I think it's time to delve a little bit more into that character and what they do with her here. And the fact that, we realized that she was going to be brought back to life, basically. And they brought her back to life in their secret hand way. And it erases her memory and makes her the Black Sky, which they never explain other than she's the Black Sky. So don't mess with the Black Sky because she's the Black Sky and nobody messes with the Black Sky because she's prophesied, I think, to be the Black Sky.
And that's the thing, too, because there's a line in there, if I am not misremembering, where the Japanese guy tells her that she's the one that prophesized about him. Her, sorry. And I'm like, so she made, I don't understand. Yeah, and of course, nothing's explained. This is the problem with the hand since it's been introduced now, since Daredevil season 1, is like, nothing is clear. Like, there's no idea. Like, they finally got around to the actual hand characters here in the show. And some of them have some certain powers, and some of them can do some things. They can come back unless you cut their head off, I guess, but maybe not. And then there's just this whole like level of weird, mystical, not defined stuff. And then of course now it's connected with the Iron Fist with the Kunlun stuff. And I don't know. I don't like them as villains.
And ancient dragons.
Don't
forget the ancient dragons.
Ancient dragon bones, which exist under all major cities, apparently, I guess, is the implication, because all these other cities...
They all have doorways into Kunlun, I guess? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. And
you can only open them with the Iron Fist, so...
I don't know. It's just... It was dumb. I thought it was dumb. I've always thought it was dumb. That's okay. I guess that's an easy way to have hordes of ninjas for your good guys to beat up, but I don't know. It just didn't feel very thought out. There's no answers. I don't know what's going on.
No, I agree with you because I think the thing that happens with Elektra coming back and they don't really define anything that's happening, and this has kind of been a problem with... I would say this is a problem with a lot of Marvel things. Not just this, but I felt the same way with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I sometimes feel the same way with their movies, where it's just like they don't spend enough time on enough exposition to help you kind of get what's going on. I mean, just even the basics, right? And I'm right there with you. The hand has never been sufficiently explained. Neither has Kunlun. Yeah. We don't really get what these things are. Now, look, before anybody writes us nasty emails about how stupid we are, I'm somebody, and I've said it before here on the 602 Club, I don't know the Marvel comics themselves all that well. So I'm coming into this as a newbie, and therefore I look at it as one. Now, I know some things, I'm aware of some stuff, but this kind of depth that we're getting into in these shows at this point, as we're really digging into the Marvel Universe with these characters and the Defenders, I feel like we are kind of needing more explanation. This is one of the major faults that was in Iron Fist, is that there was not enough explanation for me to care about Kunlun or any of those things. And this is also the frustration that we're getting here with like the background with Elektra, the Black Sky. There's some sort of prophecy. Who is she? I mean, is she like the chosen one, like Anakin? Misread the prophecy? It could have been. What's going on? Like, I don't know any of this stuff, and it does become kind of frustrating as a viewer where, you know, the Hand is not a bad idea, right? The idea that they're kind of the Illuminati is cool. You know, I mean, we so many stories in comic books have this kind of, you know, ultra secret. I mean, Star Trek even has it with Section 31.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, so I guess maybe this is Marvel's Section 31.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. I don't know if I would agree with that, but
Anyway.
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, the Hand, I mean, and then we're introduced to a whole brand new character that is apparently the leader of the Hand, though we've never met her before or even had her referenced, and it's Sigourney Weaver.
Yes, of all people, who I like and does well. I don't see her as a threat. I mean, obviously, at this point, not trying to deliberately spoil anything, but she doesn't make it all the way through, and I didn't understand the organizational structure of the Hand, because so when she's first introduced in that first episode or second, whichever one it was, we see Madame Gao, who we up to this point thought was the big bad, and then of course it becomes very clear that Sigourney Weaver's character Alexandra has control over Madame Gao, but it's not really control because they all can kind of vote for stuff. I don't know. It's made kind of ambiguous. I did like that we knew Madame Gao and had experienced her before, as well as and I'm gonna forget the other guy's name, but he was in Iron Fist.
Bakutu
Bakutu or whatever. Yeah.
Bakutu. Yeah, there you
go. We didn't know the other three, which isn't a big problem for me, but it was cool to see that at least two of the people that we've encountered before are connected to it. So that was which we knew technically, but you know what I mean. Just to see them there as like part of the villain ship, it was cool.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because like I have absolutely no problem with Sigourney Weaver. She's great. You know, she's good in so many of the things that she's been in. Obviously, Alien and Aliens. You know, she's fantastic. But here, being this character, Madame Gao is way more terrifying than she ever is.
Absolutely.
She never comes off as the intimidating type. She, you know, part of it, I don't know if part of it is that they make her sick. And so, but I'm just never intimidated. I'm never scared by her. I'm never worried about her. I don't think she's a threat. The fact that they had her do any kind of fighting too felt ridiculous and stupid. And I think she's woefully miscast in this role because there's no menace from her whatsoever. She just does not fulfill the role well at all. And it's not, I don't know if it's her fault. I just don't think she's the right person to be doing this. I think they got her because she's Sigourney Weaver, but I do not think she fits this character whatsoever because I think you needed somebody that even though they have this supposed weakness of this sickness, that you're immediately intimidated by them every second that they're on screen. And I never once ever felt that from her. So
yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. It's interesting because on paper it seems like something that Sigourney Weaver would be really kind of amazing at is, you know, this no nonsense kind of character that's going to just take charge of every room that she's in, you know. It just doesn't come across as effective. Like you say, it must just not be the right fit for the character because I never saw her as the one that was to be concerned about. I don't know. It's just, it's quite clear. And it's kind of disappointing too, but like I say, you know, what can you do?
You know, I was trying to think like who would you cast in this role? And before I ask that though, do you think possibly it could have just been helped if we had her longer than just this show and we had never known she was sick until now, so that she'd kind of been in the background and been building that like menace? Because I mean, here she's really a lame Phantom Menace. It's always been behind the scenes.
That's a good one.
But you're like, I don't care. You know, like Madame Gao again is way scarier than you are.
Yeah, because she had a build up, slow reveal, and kind of like at first you didn't think she was anything, and then wow, okay, she can do these kind of crazy badass things, and then oh my goodness, all these characters are terrified of her, and then we never get this sense that Madame Gao is afraid of. In fact, I kind of think that she's probably still alive based on that last scene that she had. We'll see. But yeah. But I still think of her as a way more effective villain. You just asked who would be good in that role, and I was thinking of a character that we didn't get to see in the Defenders that is, I think, really terrifying in a different way, but like an effective way, is Carrie-Anne Moss as the lawyer Hogarth.
Oh, yes.
And it's like her performance, I could see kind of doing that thing where she just walks into the room and like she just gives you the glance, and you kind of just know that you have to do what she says. That's just off the top of my head, but I wish we could have seen her character still.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm right there with you, because I feel like she has, obviously playing Hogarth, she's already been kind of villainous in, Jessica Jones. And so seeing her, wow, if they hadn't cast her for Hogarth, she would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of somebody else that I feel like could have pulled off that role and, kind of around Sigourney Weaver's age range. I don't know. It's just hard to think of somebody. But the person that keeps coming to mind, I wonder, I don't know. I might have been more scared of somebody like Helen Mirren.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I think, if there's one thing about the show, this season with the Defenders, that is probably its downfall, is that I wasn't scared of its major villain, which is Sigourney Weaver. And if she had kind of been left out in a lot of ways, I feel like it would have been better, because the Hand itself is already creepy enough. And I think everybody else that they had filling those roles was good, and it was kind of great to see the Hand kind of finally fully come out of the shadows, and they're putting their plan together, and their whole plan is basically they want to get back to Kunlun so that they can rule now that it's been destroyed because the Iron Fist left. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, that they want to go home and after all of these millennia of being away. And I kind of love that the Hand basically has a bloody Lazarus pit that brings them back to life.
That's essentially what it is, yeah.
I was like, wow, that's... I don't know which one came first, so I can't make that... But it was just like, I've seen that before.
Yep.
This one's just a lot bloodier and more disgusting.
You were just talking, and I was thinking, I think you're right. If there was less of the villain stuff, I think it would have been more effective. I think it's all of that stuff kind of just shows like this supposed to be this organization that's existed for thousands of years and is completely in the secret. And it just seems like these people couldn't get anything done. I don't know how these people did anything. They didn't seem effective. They didn't seem threatening. They didn't seem scary. They kept talking about scary things like New York crashing and burning, but like it never seemed like an actual credible threat to the characters or to the city. So the whole thing, again, I think it's partly to do with like how ambiguous everything is. I don't know. It's the part of the show that just didn't work for me.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. And, sometimes with a villain, that ambiguity kind of works. It kind of makes me think of in Lord of the Rings with Sauron, how there's a lot of ambiguity to him, but he's always menacing. You never see the guy except for in the, opening prologue. He's just this big glowing eye, and yet there's this way in which they kind of engulf the whole thing in this fear that really works. And I think you're absolutely right that the less is more actually worked with the villain in that series, and I think it would have done here too. And it is frustrating because it almost seems like this series, a lot like Avengers, is more about the heroes coming together than it is the villain. And if you had just revealed enough about the Hand, so you knew their connection with Kunlun and all that kind of stuff, and kind of filled in those gaps a little bit more, that's great. You know, it connects Iron Fist with Daredevil and all this stuff. It connects the big, hole we saw at the end of Daredevil Season 2, which I never thought that they'd follow up with it, but now we know they've been digging because they're trying to get access to this door. They need the Iron Fist to open, and they're also planning on basically, and this is the other thing, they're really like a inept version of the League of Assassins. Because the League of Assassins, remember, in Batman Begins, is going to destroy Gotham because it's gotten too corrupt and opulent and all of these things, and it's time for Gotham to end. Well, now it's time for New York City to end in the exact same way. And I was like, a lot of these story points just, feel recycled from better material.
Yeah, I can't. I'm like you. I can't speak to the origins of the Hand as an organization. Although I do know that they must be at least older than 81 or 83. I can't remember when the Turtles came out, because the Foot Clan is based off of the Hand. So I know that. But I can't speak to which came first or which is, But I agree. It's not as scary of a concept. Here's the thing. I hope we're done with the Hand now. I do. I mean,
me too.
I don't care, honestly. Like if, you mentioned this is like Avengers, and the fact that it's more about getting the heroes together than who they're fighting, and I'm okay with that. If they do it with the once, right? Now give us a challenge. You know what I mean? For Defender Season 2, ramp it up, but don't give us the same thing. Please, please, please don't give us this cut off the head and 3 more grow every single time. I don't want to be dealing with the Hand for the next, or Elektra.
I don't need it to turn into Hydra.
Yeah, exactly.
That, okay?
Exactly. So find some other new big bad, or whatever. We've had 2, 3, 4.5-ish seasons of the Hand stuff. I think at this point they should just say, yeah, that's it. That was it. We cut off the head. We killed them, and that's the end of it.
Oh, we cut off the Hand.
There you go. Well, too soon for certain characters in the show.
True story. Sorry, Misty, my bad. What was interesting about this season of the Defenders, the first season here, is that Stick is back, and they finally kind of reveal what he's been up to this whole time, like what his mission has been. And this I thought was honestly well done. This is a thing that I thought was really interesting, to bring him back, and that his whole goal in, training Elektra and Matt, he is somebody who's been fighting the Hand, and he saw the natural ability in both of them, and it was his goal, and Elektra was even somebody who was recruiting Matt, and she ends up falling in love with him, and that was obviously not in Stick's plan. But I loved all of that, kind of tying this together, and again, a lot like the Avengers does, it kind of uses all these little bits and pieces to kind of put together its film, and whether it doesn't all work perfectly, but it works well enough, and Stick was a big key part of that kind of coming together.
Yeah, and that's what the best part of these movies and these shows do. That's when you get that, it's like when it's so rewarding, and you're like, oh, Stick, the guy that we learned about in Daredevil Season 1 through Daredevil Season 2, and on and on and on. And it's like, I've been with this character the whole time. I know this character, and I can see what's happening and what's going to happen to them next. And I think it's a really fitting end for that character as well. It was very satisfying. The way he died to me made sense. I was surprised that he didn't come to that decision earlier. I thought that was going to happen in the first scene when they're all kind of discussing what they need to do with Iron Fist. And I'm like, well, Stick's going to try to cut off his head. But it made sense. And it kind of, we didn't really get to see the fallout with Matt, just very, very briefly. But it's very significant. Obviously, he's been right in the middle of the thick of this whole thing. And I hope it's an indication that they will leave this behind because his story is now done. I mean, maybe flashbacks or whatever, but I agree with you. It works tremendously well, what he does in the show.
And I just like having him back. I love that actor.
Yep, he's great.
I've loved him since Hunt for October. And I just think he is a fantastic actor. And it's just kind of, again, he's somebody that, Scott Glenn is one of those guys where I also love that he's just as sarcastic and smartass he is Jessica Jones.
Yep.
I just want to see those two battle back and forth and see who can, outsmart ass each other. So I thought that was really good. I was just thinking, and I kind of wanted to ask before we kind of get closer to wrapping up, but was there anything else for you that just kind of stuck out about the season that either you really enjoyed or, on the other side, that something that ended up bothering you?
The end of the show, once they get down to the pit, is super, super dark. Like the last 2 to 3 episodes are insanely dark. And it was bothering me.
And you're just talking about like light levels?
Yes,
for the
light.
show?
I'm talking about
Okay.
just,
Okay.
yes, yeah. No, not like the subject matter or anything like that. Because in the beginning, there's this really, they do this neat thing with the lighting that they kind of bring it all in, from every other, the show has very unique lighting, obviously, when you're watching.
Yes.
When you're watching Jessica Jones.
And they light, and they light it just like you would see all the different shows. Yeah, absolutely.
And then eventually there's a kind of blending that they do. It's really interesting what they do in the first half of the show. And then in the second half of the show, especially towards the end, like I said, it just gets so dark. And it was really jarring to me and really bothered me. I loved it in the beginning, but then at the end, I really hated it. So I'm not sure what happened there, but maybe they just, I guess, ran out of light bulbs or something.
Yeah, no, that's something that I really liked about the show, is the way in which they kind of, as they're melding these people together, they're using the lighting schemes from the other shows to, so Luke Cage tends to be in gold lighting, that kind of warm lighting. You get Matt with red, and you get Jessica with that kind of washed out purplish lighting, and then you get Iron Fist and Danny Rand with kind of this green tint, and everything kind of works together. And I thought that was really fun, the way they were paying homage to where the characters come from. But I think you're right. It does feel like the scenes, and maybe it's just the scenes where they are, and they are really dark. But it's I don't know. It's I'm with you. It does kind of get a little bit obnoxious when you're just kind of struggling maybe to even see what's going on the screen because it's so dark. So I agree with you there. But I liked the work they did beforehand where, they're really setting up the show with the different characters, and then they're kind of bringing them together. And I don't know, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't feel like they kind of found the Defenders look.
No,
other than dark.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there really was, which is kind of an interesting situation. I don't have a problem with that. If the Defenders is going to be just this team up, and you just kind of have this mishmash of the styles from the different shows, that makes sense in a lot of ways, right? I would get why you'd want to visually distinguish it as well, but I can also see the other side of it where it's like, oh, no, this is just kind of just, especially since, this is the first time. It's very clear that they're not really a part of an organized group at all. This is just this kind of ramshackle thing. Obviously, by the end, they become friends, and it's mostly hunky-dory, but, in the beginning, you go through the regular growth spurts that any super team does. We see the characters fight each other and doubt each other and then turn on each other and then eventually learn to trust each other. So it's, not surprising.
Yeah, it was pretty funny to watch Luke Cage get hit with the Iron Fist.
That was a great scene.
That was, and that was something that, kind of bothered me as well. Like, the Iron Fist, right? Him hitting Luke Cage with the Iron Fist, and it does that. But, like, shouldn't him, like, hitting anybody else with that fist, like, just go shatter through them? Every bone in their body?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Basically, like, Batman v Superman, where he presses in the Nightmare Batman sequence, where he presses on Batman's chest, and it just goes right through.
Yep.
Like, shouldn't that basically happen?
Yeah, he should not punch people with his Iron Fist, I think is really the big irony here, because it would make them explode, I think, for sure. But it is
the irony fist.
It is. That's the big moment, though, right? Like, that's the if we're gonna liken this to the Avengers, that is the what would happen if, Thor smashed a shield on Captain America? Thor smashed his hammer on Captain America's shield. It's that moment where it's like, well, how would these two things interact? And I think it was a super awesome scene because, Danny's just going nuts on him with all of his, training and stuff like that. And Luke is just taking it. He doesn't care. He's like, what are you doing, man? Like, he's just throwing him around like he's a boy. And then, of course, Danny pulls this out of his back pocket and Luke is stunned. It's a really great reversal, and it's played for laughs. And I think it's very effective.
No, I agree with you. It was fun to watch those two heroes fight, and yes, it is very much that Avengers scene of watching Thor and Iron Man kind of go at it, and then Cap's trying to break them up. And it's just, it is good stuff. So, I guess we're at the very end here where we're going to talk about the very end of the show and a major spoiler. So if you've got with us this far and you're still listening, we're about to spoil something rotten, and so you can either turn it off or just keep listening since you're still here. The very end of the show also seems to be an ending and a beginning. And I was just wondering what you thought of how they handled that with Matt.
We talked a little bit about it before the show, and I'm of two minds of it. I don't mind when they play up this whole sacrificial hero kind of gives up his life for the event, but then when they turn it around within 2 or 3 scenes, I just don't understand it. Like, I guess this isn't the worst offender of it because they don't even really pretend like he's dead.
So you're saying you're going to be a defender of it?
Nice. I'm more excited about what it plays up for the future because from what I understand, like you, I'm not super familiar with the comics, but from what I understand, the storyline is quite well respected, and that this is setting up, I believe. And I don't know, but his sacrifice is weird because I don't get why he's willing to do this. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Elektra seems like a pretty terrible person by the end because she still recognizes who she is and is still willing to let the city get destroyed. I don't know why he's like down there doing what he's doing. Nobody needed to be down there as far as I could tell. It just seemed kind of like an empty gesture. No, I'm not really sure. It's fine, I guess.
The idea that Elektra can be saved, like, I love you, Matt. We got the same first name. But I think that, she's not Darth Vader, okay? There is no good in her anymore. And it's pretty clear by the end that there isn't. She's just ready to die. Yeah. Maybe it says a lot about Matt that he's willing to die with her. Okay. Sure. But along with the hand, I'm done with Elektra.
Yep, I agree.
I haven't liked the storyline that they've done with her at all. In the first place, I haven't liked the characterization of her. I've just found it kind of so I'm just ready for her to not be around. And so if this is their way of getting rid of her, great. I would really love that. So, the little bit I know is that at least what this seems to be saying is we see the scene of Matt being tended to by nuns. This could lead to a classic story that was done by Frank Miller called Born Again, which is apparently the darkest story ever for Daredevil. Like, it is just super, super dark. And from everything that I have read on it, they probably will only use bits and pieces of that, but they'll reference some things, is my guess.
That's Marvel's really good at picking and choosing what elements from different storylines to use. I think they have a pretty good track record of that. Generally speaking, what I'm most interested in is that this classic storyline is apparently the elements are driven by the Kingpin. So I'm curious if that's a big hint that we're going to get some more Kingpin, which I would definitely enjoy after all this hand stuff. I think that would be pretty cool.
Well, it'd just be great to have the Kingpin be the actual Kingpin this time. Like,
like an actual Kingpin of crime. Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, so he was, because he wasn't fully the Kingpin at that point in season 1. So it'd be kind of great to have him back. Vincent D'Onofrio is a fantastic actor, and I would love to see him back just in that role. So, I think all in all, too, the ending for everybody else, it just leaves me interested in the rest of their shows. I still have to say, not really that interested in Iron Fist. Can we just have a show about Colleen and maybe leave the Iron Fist alone? Because she's still a way more interesting character.
Colleen
sadly.
and the Iron Fist.
Actually, let's just make her the Iron Fist.
It was actually that's not a bad idea. It was the one thing that actually did bother me was the way Colleen was handled. Believe it or not, I love the character. She was my favorite character in Iron Fist, and I don't know. There were certain times that I was just like, why is she wouldn't like act like this? I don't know why she's doing this. They that one scene with her and Claire, I think, is well done, and I liked that scene. But the other aspects of her character, I think, they kind of she gave up some element of her that she had in Iron Fist, and I don't know what it is, but I don't know, maybe her spunk. I don't know what it is, but I that was the character I felt that was kind of serviced the least in, especially considering how much she was featured, because she was in the show quite a bit.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if part of that just is the fact that they're having a hard time juggling all the characters in the first place, and what do they do with her, and how do they maybe find a way to not have her as involved on purpose. But I do agree with you, but she didn't seem to come off as strong of a character as she was in the Iron Fist season, which was a little bit frustrating because I feel like she is a better character than this. And she's a much better character than Danny in the first place, so I would have rather had spent more time with her and less time with him if there was a way to do that, but there isn't a way to do that because she's not the Iron Fist, he is. And so, but yeah, I was frustrated as well that I didn't feel like she got as much to do, and it wasn't as rewarding for her as a character.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I guess all in all, I'm wondering, we kind of talked about some pros and cons. We've had, I think, a fair bit of both. So I'm really interested to kind of see where you come down with your rating for the show.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm kind of two minds of this. I really, really like the team up aspect. I appreciated that it's a shorter season. I think it could have definitely run the risk of dragging things out way too much if they did that. I think it had the appropriate levels of all of the different elements that I liked. I think that the humor was there and the action was there, the villainy was there, but they weren't all fantastic. Like again, the hand was kind of weak. It would have been nice if there was something in place of that was a little more effective. But I think it was the parts I wanted to see the most of, the conflicts, the coming together, the team. I really enjoyed those aspects, and I was very surprised to enjoy the secondary characters just as much. This is something I hope that they do. I don't know that they can't really do this as much in the movies because obviously there's not enough time. But with the show like this, you can really, really integrate those different characters and bring them all together.
Yes.
And I loved that. And I'm very excited. Like you mentioned, hey, maybe we're going to have Misty show up in Jessica Jones or whatever. Whatever show that you can cross-pollinate all these characters now. And I'm excited for that. So I don't know if I was going to go out of, what would I go out of 4? Because there's 4 people. I don't know. No, 5. Of course, we're gonna do a hand. This is what we're gonna do.
Yes.
I would give it up.
How many fingers?
Yeah, I would give it 2 fingers and a knuckle out of a hand.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to what comes next.
Yeah. I think. When I'm thinking about what we talked about. And I realized that I had a lot more complaints than I thought I did, which, talking it through, that sometimes happens. And that was really interesting to me. And so it actually kind of took my rating down a little bit. And I think that this is probably, when I look over the Marvel series, if I were going to rewatch a season, it's either going to be Luke Cage, Daredevil season 1, or probably this. So that puts it in the upper echelon for me. I still feel like rewatching this season is enjoyable because I'm liking all the interaction with the characters, even if I'm not necessarily liking everything that's happening. And that's a good thing. That's very important. Obviously, we want that to work the most when you're doing a team up. And so, I think that this probably gets 2 fingers and half a middle finger for Jessica Jones, because that's what she would give you.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
And so, it's like, and if I put it numerically, it's like 2.75. Yeah. It's almost 3, but it's like there were too many things that kind of I don't feel like they did as well, and didn't maybe put as much thought process into as they could have. And look, I don't like when people just compare Marvel and DC and say one's better than the other, right? And I'm not doing that here. I'm just going to compare television shows because I just recently rewatched season 2 of Flash. And like right before I watched this season of The Defenders. And I feel like that obviously has a lot more time, but I think this didn't need more time. It just needed more explanation. And I feel like the DC TV shows, for the most part, have really found their groove in really doing a good job of explaining everything by the end.
The CW TV shows, you mean?
The CW, yes. And I like Gotham personally. It's a whacked out weird show.
Yeah, I'm just saying you're just not
totally
you're not lumping
whacked.
that in there with those shows.
No, it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
No, but the CW TV shows, I feel like they have kind of found that groove of really being able to make you feel comfortable by the end of the season with all of the stuff that they've done and sufficiently, for the most part, explaining things. And so I think that the Marvel shows need to find a way to do that. And sometimes I feel like maybe the Marvel shows are taking themselves so seriously that they're kind of missing some of that basic stuff that you just need in a TV show, like to really explain some important things. So, again, I still enjoyed watching this show. For all my nitpicks and all the things we talked about, I still had a good time, and that was because I liked the 4 main characters together, and like you, I liked the tertiary characters all together. And what the shows have done is, for the most part, create likable characters, except for Danny Rand. And I'm excited to continue to see somebody like Daredevil go into his season, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. I'm looking forward to seeing all that happen again. And then, of course, find a way to into Defender Season 2 sometime.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, too, that like we did get a little bit of the crossover when Luke Cage showed up in Jessica Jones, but I'm excited also to see small cameos like we kind of get in the more movies now. Now Matt Murdock could show up for legal advice in the middle of Jessica Jones season 2 or whatever.
Yep.
Just because. So I like that, and I hope that they capitalize on that. And that was one of the bigger disappointments, that was that there was no Punisher, at least reference, or cameo in Defenders. I wish he had showed up at some point. That would have been interesting. But
oh yeah, can't wait for that. I'm really looking forward to his show because he was the best part about Daredevil season 2. So, yeah, I mean, I love getting to talk about this stuff. I love the fact that we've got our associate producers Ken Tripp and Davis Grayson through Patreon, and they make sure that this show and every other show on the network happens for you. I really appreciate them taking their hard-earned money and pouring it back into Trek FM. It's a huge enterprise that we have here at Trek FM. There's so many shows going on, and we can't do it without you. And the way that you can help us is by going over to patreon.com/TrekFM, and you can support the show. Every little bit helps. There's different contribution levels. There's many different ways that we give back to you. But in the end, it's just every little bit a month that you can help out. Make sure that all the shows keep coming to you ad-free as well. Great content, I think, that we do across the network. So, again, go to patreon.com/TrekFM and see how you can be part of the team. Now, Daniel, before we get out of here and before you go find something else to defend, Yeah, where can we find you?
You could find me. I've got a couple of other shows, but really the best way to find me and any chance you want to get a hold of me will be on Twitter, and that is the username 1UpDan. That is the number 1, not the word.
Awesome. And don't forget to check him out. He's over there on the Nerd Party doing SETI Alpha 3.
That's right.
So make sure you check that out. You can find me on Twitter, MattRushing02. I'm under Instagram under the same name. I'm here on the network with Chris Jones doing The Orb when we can find a chance to get that done because of our crazy schedules. Talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the world's best Star Trek show. You can also find me on the Nerd Party, just like Daniel, and I'm doing a couple of shows there. I'm doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills, talking all about Star Wars. We pretty much just find a topic each week and talk about it, something that we've been thinking about the Star Wars universe. So make sure you join us. I think you're going to love it. You can also find me over there doing Owlpost, which is a Harry Potter podcast, and we're going through each and every chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. And in fact, we just finished Book 2. So we're about to dive into the Prisoner of Azkaban, which I'm so excited about. So I hope you'll check that out. Yes, it's my favorite book still in the series. And last but not least, I'm doing a show called Cinema Stories, and that one is all about film through the lens of faith. So if that's something that interests you, you can find all of those shows and that one on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And y'all come back now, you hear?